affidavit, his own representation. John Cornyn, go ahead.
Well, it's obvious there were multiple points of failure on this day where that resulted in the loss of one life and 3 injured individuals, including the former President of the United States and Republican nominee for president in 2024. Some of the things that struck me were, for example, the drone that was used by the shooter to surveil the grounds to see where everybody was and where they were not. And amazingly, when the Secret Service tried to use their drone, they said there was a network congestion. I asked the obvious question, why, if the shooter's drone worked, why didn't the Secret Service's drone work? And they said, well, we're looking into that. Secondly, as you know, the drones are ubiquitous these days, and they can also be weaponized. So there would not have been even the necessity for the shooter to have a gun if he had an ability to deploy a weaponized drone that day, something that the Secret Service was completely unprepared to deal with. I asked, do you have electronic warfare or jamming capability? And they said, well, we really can't talk about that here. Another one of their multiple points of failure. And then, as you've heard from my colleagues up here, the fact that a suspicious individual was identified, the acting director wanted to say, well, it wasn't until we saw the gun that we knew he would be a problem or a threat. But the fact of the matter is, the Secret Service allowed President Trump to go on the stage without having adequately investigated this suspicious individual. If they had simply asked him to stand down while they investigated, they would have discovered the shooter, and this shooting would never have occurred in the first place. Next, the Secret Service simply tried to delegate to local law enforcement their responsibilities, which are to keep their protectees safe. And the acting director made the point of saying Secret Service are the elite in law enforcement, and I believe that's true. These are the best of the best. But then for some reason, when it came to providing protection for President Trump, they delegated this to local law enforcement, obviously people less trained to deal with the sorts of threats that they saw that day, resulting in another point of failure. But finally, the lack of communication or ability to communicate the threat to the agents on the stage with the president was another point of failure. Because if they had been able to have simply a walkie-talkie or radio, which would have communicated from the field directly to the agents, they could have asked the president to keep his seat and to stay out of harm's way. So thanks to the divine intervention, President Trump did not lose his life that day. I told him that it's obvious God has other plans for him. But the fact of the matter is that the Secret Service has now been transferred since 2003 to the Department of Homeland Security. Now, why should that cause any of us concerns? Well, you've seen the job that the Department of Homeland Security is doing at the southern border. With about 10 million people released in the interior of the United States, Alejandro Mayorkas should have resigned years ago, completely incompetent, lied to Congress repeatedly, and now he's in charge of the Secret Service because they're part of the Department of Homeland Security. Obviously, we need to look at this matter from top to bottom, and we need to fix the Secret Service so no future candidates or existing office holders are exposed to this sort of threat again.
Thanks, John. I just want to put an explanation point